Welcome, Star Wars fans, episode 146 of tatooinesons. Some of the greatest moments in Star Wars movie history take place during the first act of Attack of the Clones.
What?
There's the awesome car chase, a changeling, Anakin and Padme's first kiss, the revelation of the clones, and who can forget Anakin's declaration of love for sand. It's a prequels meme fest this week. Plus, we're joined by Michael Condon of TooMedToo's Bacta tank to get his hot takes on the latest Star Wars news and rumors.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
It's time for tatooinesons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called tatooinesons. Everybody was lit.
Welcome, Star Wars fans. This is tatooinesons, your weekly look into all things Star Wars from the unique perspective of a father sharing his love for the amazing space fantasy saga with his two sons. I am BB Nate, and I'm joined first by my brother, Samuel Hutt.
Shoot to Star Wars fans, thanks for tuning in. And if you're not a Star Wars fan, then you're probably still familiar with Taika Waititi's line of comedy through movies like Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
well.
Jojo Rabbit was weird.
It was weird.
strange.
It was weird, but good.
And a little uncomfortable at times.
I think it was supposed to be.
Maybe that's that Jewish blood in me right now. It's like, I don't know if I like this movie or not.
And
No, it was good. But he's Jewish too. You know, his like grandmother was Jewish or
I did
something.
not know that.
Yeah. And of course, you can't have Star Wars without
And he
Bizarre
played
Father.
Hitler. Sorry.
Right, sorry.
Can I finish my sentence?
No, we're having too much fun talking.
And of course, you can't have Star Wars without Bizarre Father figures. So on that note, here's my dad, the Witch Jedi guy.
What's
up?
up? Kick that into like radio ad disclaimer mode there at the end.
Yeah, I was like Micro Machine Man when I was a kid. So there was these little
I can do
toys.
that.
Do you guys know what Micro Machines
Yeah,
were?
I
They
saw
were,
them
like,
at the
super
comic
little
store.
car-
They had like Star Wars macro.
They did. I had Star Wars. I had Star Wars Micro Machines set of Cloud City, Bespin, No, I Am Your Father, Luke losing his hand, that whole set.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like my prized Star Wars toy because I didn't have many Star Wars toys growing up. So it was pretty cool. How you guys doing?
Fine.
Good.
Good. Sam, you've been working hard on not doing college?
Pretty much.
So we haven't really talked a whole lot on the show about that.
No.
So you're doing CLEP testings for those. You know, I say the word CLEP testing to people all the time now
And they're
because
like-
you guys are both doing it so
Right.
much. Like Nathan's going to have his college degree at age 16, I think, by the time he's done with all of his CLEP testing. But most people don't know, or a lot of people don't know about it. So
Yeah.
explain.
Basically, it's a service where you take this test to basically prove the knowledge you already have for a subject to get college credit for that class. So, for instance, right now I'm taking I took a biology CLEP. Basically, what I did is I studied for the test. I took the test, and you get a grade between like 20 and 80 or something, but most colleges just require you have a 50 to get credit for the class. So it doesn't help your GPA or in any way, but if you're transferring to a school, it's a way to get college credit for a class for very cheap. The test is about $80. Testing fee is usually about $40. But if you use a certain service, I use Modern States to study through. They will cover your exam ticket and the cost of the test.
Yeah, they pay you back to do the test in the course.
So I'm getting college credit for free, essentially, and in a shorter amount of time too, because it's self-paced, so you can usually get it done before like a semester would be over.
And you don't actually had to have graduated from high school to do these tests. BB Nate, how many? You've done one so far, right?
Yes, I've just finished my course for the second one. So
Okay, so you took the English
college composition, yeah.
And that counted for, basically in most colleges, that counts for English 101 and English 102, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you got 2 college credits already from that, and you just did you just finished the course for
natural sciences.
Natural sciences. That's not biology. You did biology already.
Biology was apparently the hardest CLEP out there, and it does not surprise me. That CLEP sucked.
Yeah, and you're doing history right now. You just finished that one up.
Yeah, history 2, because for some reason I don't need history 1. But.
So we haven't talked about it a whole lot, but everybody that listens to the show regularly, if you've been listening for the last year, then you know that we moved to Florida because Sam got admitted into the University of Central Florida for their aerospace engineering program. Doesn't sound like you're taking aerospace engineering right now.
Very much not.
Really quick, explain.
Long story short, I wasn't happy with anything that they've been doing, how they were handling classes this last semester.
Because of COVID, they were doing a lot of things
right,
weird.
and I wasn't a fan of that. And then they were not helpful. They did not communicate well at all. And apparently, since I dropped out of classes last semester because I didn't want to handle them the way they were
because you didn't want to take YouTube?
Right, pretty much. I apparently had to reapply, essentially, for the spring semester. Well, it was reactivate, but it was the same thing as reapplying, basically. And I didn't get in.
Nice.
So that was kind of an indication that, I think I need to look elsewhere.
Yeah, but you have another option. So you're going to be a legacy in the new school you're going to. So explain. Mom graduated from here. So.
I'm going back. Well, I'm going to University of South Alabama up in Mobile. Which is where Mom graduated. That's where Savannah, my girlfriend, she's going. Oh, yeah, get it out now. But I got accepted there, and I got an amazing scholarship there. That's also going to give me in-state tuition starting now.
Even though you don't live in Alabama,
right? Yeah. So that's a big help, and I've toured it, and I like the school, and they're so much better at communication. Like, even just the other day, I asked this lady, like, hey, when do I get an advisor? I need to, like, go over my classes and see what checks off or whatever. And she's like, well, you're not going to get one till you're enrolled, but she's like, but I'd be happy to go over the stuff with you.
What?
Like, you wouldn't get that at University of Central Florida. I'd be lucky if I got a response to my email at all. So...
So we're not like, if you're a UCF person, we're sorry, but your school doesn't have great customer service.
Not at all.
And so we're going to go, he's going to be in Alabama. That's good, too.
Go Jags.
Go Jags. Jackson, our University of South Alabama Jaguars.
Yeah.
That's cool. When Mom graduated, they didn't have a football team.
Really?
Yeah, they had a basketball team, and they usually competed. They can make the NCAA tournament, occasionally, not have any chance to win it, but they've made it.
They've made it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
But the Jags are going to be fun. That'll be fun for you. Have another school. It's like a sitcom. Our life.
Nice.
Nice
segue.
segue.
That was good.
Good one.
That was good.
Pretty proud of that moment.
Very smooth. No, it flew
Speaking of
sitcoms,
we're 3 episodes into WandaVision. We're going to watch the 4th one a little later today, hopefully. Yeah. We're 3 episodes in. First reactions to WandaVision. I'll start with you, BB Nate.
I'm really enjoying it. I'm excited for what it's going to be. It's very difficult to make a series when you're already 23 movies into a series. It's that you already have these characters established, so you can't have a pilot episode establishing the characters and what the plot is. So it's a difficult situation for them, and I understand it's not for everybody, but I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the newest episode.
Yeah.
And excited for the rest of the series.
Cool. Samuel the Hutt, what do you think about it?
I was not on board the first couple episodes. I'm like, I don't get it. They haven't answered any of my questions. This isn't fun. But after that 3rd episode, I'm like, okay, now stuff's happening. Now I'm intrigued. Like, I was just confused before. Now I'm still confused, but I'm hooked.
Yeah. For me, it was different, obviously. It's supposed to be different.
Yeah.
Mom hates it.
Very different.
Mom hates it. She doesn't enjoy it at all. And she's an MCU person. Like, she'd get into MCU stuff.
Right.
And she's watching it because she's, we've sort of heard that you pretty much need to watch it to understand the future of the MCU.
This is going to be, I heard this is going to be a trilogy, starting with WandaVision, the middle is going to be Spider-Man 3, and the last one's going to be Doctor Strange.
Okay, so you need to know it. So she's watching it, but she just really didn't like it. It doesn't feel like the Marvel Universe to her.
It's very different.
It's campy. Here's where it's fun for me. So my sister, my only sibling, she's 10 years older than me. And so during the summers, when school was, out, my mom would have work stuff to do. My dad was obviously working. And so they weren't home. So I would stay home with my sister, and she'd babysit, she'd watch us, and it was no big deal. But every day at lunchtime, she'd make lunch at noon, and we would watch I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke, and Bewitched back to back to back. And then I think it was usually like the Andrew Griffith Show, which doesn't really fit this context, but it's really interesting because when I'm watching the first episode, I've got a huge I Love Lucy feel in their bedroom because it's separate beds,
right?
And that was the
that was
in the I Love Lucy. Even though Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz that played the characters in I Love Lucy were literally married in real life, they wouldn't let them have the same bed.
Interesting
on it. Boy, we've come a long ways. If you watch The Big Bang, I was sitting there watching The Big Bang Theory last night because we're watching the reruns or rewatching it. We're watching it for the first time, but obviously on HBO Max. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, we've come a long ways since Lucille Ball. Anyway, and then the Dick Van Dyke Show, the main living area and the kitchen and everything, it looks just like the house on the Dick Van Dyke Show, which then I found out after that episode that it was... that he was the special consultant. Dick Van Dyke was a special consultant on that episode. And so I'm feeling a lot of that nostalgia. And I know that that's what they're going for with it.
And then the next episode,
and then when it went to color, it was Bewitched. Last week it felt like Bewitched. The tricks, the vacuuming with the with using her witchcraft and all of the fun hijinks that happened as a result. That's straight out of the Bewitched playbook. So it's felt. Those parts of it I liked, but it still didn't feel like MCU to me.
No.
And then about halfway through that episode, it started to feel like MCU.
Yep.
And
right as they mentioned Quicksilver, it started to get into the...
Yeah, which they can't actually say by name, just like they can't ever call Wanda Scarlet Witch.
Right.
Because of contractual issues. But we know who that is. So... now they may be able to call them that, but they weren't for a long time. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm excited about this next episode. It's out, so we're...
I heard reviews saying this feels like MCU, so I'm excited.
All right, so we stalled long enough. Michael's here.
I guess we should record.
We should let Michael into the show, and we'll do that out here in just a second.
This is where the fun begins.
Hello? You want the bad news or the really bad news?
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
All right, so Michael is the very first person. I think he didn't Michael, didn't you own a Turbis the Porg shirt before we did?
Yeah.
I actually did own a Turbis the Porg shirt before you did. And the funny thing about that is right now
he's wearing it.
I got it.
Yay. That's awesome.
He's more of a Turbis fan than we are.
Yeah, I threw that shirt up. I remember driving back from LA the night after all of that happened with Ryan Johnson at the IMAX headquarters and thinking I probably should go ahead and get a Turbis the Porg Twitter account in place and maybe throw a shirt or two up and see what happens. And there you go. You were the first one. And so welcome, Michael. Thanks for joining us here on Tatooinesons this week.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah. We've got some Star Wars news and rumors that we want to talk about.
Per usual.
And it's a slow week. There wasn't a lot to talk about this week, so we're going to rehash some things and maybe have a little bit of a different spin. Although one of these is pretty interesting. Daniel Richtman. Do you know who Daniel Richtman is, Michael? On Twitter or anything like that?
Not off.
He's got like 90,000 followers, and he said, he was on his Patreon page. And he had something interesting to share. Star Wars World was turned upside down in 2017 when Lucasfilm fired the comedy writing and directing duo of Lord and Miller and replaced them with the safe bet, Ron Howard, to finish out and basically rework Solo a Star Wars story. The rumor mill went into high gear with that. Most of the scuttlebutt said that the Lord and Miller were fired because... well, the film at that point was like Ace Ventura in Star Wars, is what we were hearing with it. Yeah. So the idea of a Star Wars comedy, it died pretty quickly after that. But now Daniel Richtman on his Patreon page has said that the Taika Waititi film will follow in the footsteps of his other work with Thor Ragnarok and Jojo Rabbit, and that leads to the question, Michael, what do you think about the idea of a Star Wars comedy?
I mean, this is going to be a very typical answer, but depending on how it's done, which everybody says, well, of course, depending on how it's done, but I think there's plenty of room for it. If you take especially Taika Waititi's work that he's done, it's not in your face slapstick comedy. Like, I love Spaceballs, but Spaceballs is not Star Wars, and I don't think it would really fit in Star Wars. But if you take Taika Waititi's work, you know, it's very subtle. It's more of, I'd say, like the English brand of comedy, more of a dry humor, and it's more of a thinking man's comedy where you know it might take you. They might have already moved on to the next scene, and then you get the joke or realize the symbolism that they were showing,
or watch it the second or third time through and start picking up on it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think Taika Waititi is a good move with it. While I think like if it went with like the style of Jojo Rabbit, that might be a little much because it was a good movie, but it was weird. It was weird to watch at times. But Thor Ragnarok, we all love Thor Ragnarok. We think it's like what Thor's movies should have been from the beginning. I think if it's more along the lines of that, it'll work. It was funny, but it didn't take itself too seriously, but it still had an interesting story. It still had major repercussions for the MCU in general and stuff.
And great action. It didn't
and good action.
Sacrifice action for
It was a
comedy.
good balance of all of those things. I think something along that lines could work in Star Wars, provided you have the right story and the right characters to fit it. You can't go and do this with Han or Luke or something like that.
I don't know about that. I kind of like the idea. I've even said it on this show that I think Taika Waititi would be the perfect director in the Thor Ragnarok, you know, vein of films to do a follow up to Solo, a Star Wars story. Maybe to do that, make Solo 2 happen type movie. BB Nate, what do you think about the idea of maybe Taika Waititi picking up the Solo mantle?
I don't feel like that's quite his style. I feel like he does more of these stories that I think he wants to portray what his vision for Star Wars would be and what he's wanting from Star Wars, because he's a Star Wars fan. We all know this, and he's excited to work on this. And so with everything that he's done, they are not going into this hiring Taika Waititi without knowing that there's going to be comedy in it. This is a comedy director. And yes, he did a couple episodes for season 1 of The Mandalorian, which were probably the best episodes. Like the last episode of season 1 was him, and it had a good amount of comedy in it. And so I feel like if we go like what Sammy was saying with the Thor Ragnarok feel, I think it will work very well for Star Wars, especially going to a different side of the universe and different characters that we haven't seen before, and just letting him be able to tell his story that he wants. I don't think we pick up with Solo or anything. I think we leave that for the Lando series or something.
Yeah.
You know, the that opening sequence, Michael, in the episode 8 of season 1 of I guess it's chapter 8, if we're going to do it right. Chapter 8 of The Mandalorian.
Oh, with the troopers?
With the troopers, the biker scout troopers punching on Baby Yoda at the time. We didn't know he was Grogu. That was Taika Waititi's film or episode. Do you think that kind of humor could play itself out in a Star Wars universe, or do you think that was crossing a line?
No, I think it was very well done. And I mean, of course, there people, you know, in the Twitter world, everyone gets up in arms over anything. So, you know, people wanted that episode canceled, and you know, The Mandalorian went from the best show ever to the worst show because, you know, you punched a little puppet,
a very expensive puppet.
Yeah,
but you know, it worked well. It wasn't the entire episode; it was one little part. So I think if they made a movie like that, you would just get, you know, the overall theme, or the movie itself would be humorous, but it wouldn't just be nonstop. Like I said, I mean, probably because it's the most perfect reference. Spaceballs is just nonstop comedy.
Right. It's all slapstick from start to finish. Yeah.
But I don't think that a film that he would do would be like a perfect example is Jojo Rabbit. It takes a very serious subject matter. I mean, how can you take the story of, you know, what happened during World War II and make it funny? Well, he found a way to do it. You know,
and still tell a really important story.
Yeah,
with it.
I mean, that's a major thing. And there was a little bit of discourse over it, just because anybody's going to get upset with lightening the mood on a story like that. But it's the whole storytelling process. It didn't turn out to be just a joke at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think he'd be able to show, you know, the proper way of the dark side coming, and, you know, the light side and the humor in there, that most of us would be able to appreciate.
Do you think that he'll do a completely fresh story, as what seems to have been indicated with the Disney Investors Day when they showed those scenes that looked like Tython and that type of thing behind there, and from that novel, what was it? The I can't remember
the Jedi or Dawn of the Jedi.
Dawn of the Jedi, one of those. It looked like the cover for that book. So it looks like, we could be going tens of thousands of years back in time, doing a whole brand new story. Or would you want to see him do something like a Solo sequel?
I'd be happy with either one, because I don't think this is going to be his only Star Wars film or series or episode that he's going to be left doing. I still think that Solo is going to go the way that the Netflix Marvel series went, with what was it, Iron Fist and Jessica Jones, and completely separate shows, but every once in a while in an episode there's a name dropped or there's a crossover character, one character that shows up in every one of the series, and then at the end you kind of have its own series where they all come together. I still think the Solo 2 is going to be like that, and we already have some of the the possible findings of that with some of the things that have already been announced with Lando, and we have Alden Ehrenreich saying that he hasn't come out and confirmed anything, but he's dropped some hints that there might be some things in the works. But I think they've smartened enough after what happened at Celebration in 2019, where they came out and they said, "Hey, we have this, we have that, let's go, we're ready to go." And it turns out that either none of that was true and just hype, or they really messed up when they were planning things out. Either one though is not a good look. So
yeah, it's fans can are A, fickle, and B, very unforgiving in the Star Wars space, which then leads to the next topic with this, because a new Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic game is apparently in development, according to multiple sources. And interestingly enough, the title's not going to be coming from BioWare or from EA. We really have never gotten in, the three of us have really never gotten into KOTOR. We've played it a little bit. But, we understand how impactful this story is to Star Wars fans. Michael, is it a good idea to try to resurrect the KOTOR game in the Disney era?
I think if they don't try and remake it, if they try and do their own thing, because it really is their own thing now, going just to digress a little bit, kind of like right now with what the people that are making Star Wars now are using Legends, because there's a lot of Legends that is not good. There's some Legends that's really good, and there's some Legends that are just like, it's a story we have that I don't mind reading because I don't have any other Star Wars right now. Well, they're cherry picking what they want, and that's kind of what George Lucas did at the time. Like with Coruscant. Coruscant was in a book, and he said, "Hey, I like that. I'm going to use it." They're doing it much more now because there's 100 books or whatever it is, or 20 years of this source material. None of it's canon, but they're picking and choosing what they want to make canon. So if they attempt to do that with the KOTOR game, I think that's the perfect way to do it. And once again, you still have the different levels of canon in the new era of Star Wars. Just for example, with the Clone Wars final season, the ending is a little bit different than in the Ahsoka book.
Right.
Well, which one's right? And then is it from a certain point of view? Did she really let him go? Was it Maul telling the story? Was it Ahsoka telling the story? Is this, the gospel truth of what happened? So it's kind of like, it's canon that it happened, and then it's us to interpret what we think how it happened. I always equate canon being to canon's the history of whatever you're talking about, and then it's up to interpretation on how it happened. This country won the war. Okay, let's talk about how they won the war. The light side triumphed. How did they triumph? Let's tell the stories with that.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you talk about the differences in the Ahsoka novel and the conclusion of season 7 of the Clone Wars, it doesn't really change the story, but it it is different, and it reminds me, as the Bible nerd that I am, it reminds me of like the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You have different versions of the stories there. The story is the same overall, and the meaning of the story is the same, but you have different perspectives on it. And so one guy remembers it one way, another guy remembers it a little different way, a third guy heard it from somebody a third way, and so they start telling the same story, but they have different perspectives on it. And I think that's what makes this kind of fun. BB Nate, when it comes to KOTOR, you guys were both nodding your heads when Michael said it needed to be a fresh story. It can't just be a rehash of the original story. I think I personally think that could backfire, because Star Wars fans have their story when it comes to the Knights of the Old Republic. They've got their Revan and their, all of these Bane and all of these characters that are involved, and the story is really what makes this game popular. The game itself is not all that fun to play.
It's just an RPG.
Yeah, it's a story that's fun. Do you think that they would be, how do they move forward with fans that have their own? It's not even headcanon for them. It's what the story was.
I think that if they go with the fact that when Ubisoft came out with I think that Ubisoft is making this game. If it's real, it's Ubisoft. I think that they would be the perfect choice for this. But when they announced that they were coming out with this game, they were very clear. They said this multiple times in the press release. This will be a part, whatever the story is, it's going to be a part of the Disney canon. They made that very clear. And it was kind of off-putting as to why they were... I mean, you can assume that. Anything after 2012 was mainly part of the Disney canon. And so we've all assumed this. Like Fallen Order, we never questioned that wasn't going to be a part of the canon. And so I'm feeling like they're going to be making this KOTOR game, and I feel like they're going to go with a certain path from that'll be allowed to tell the story to a new generation. I mean, you have to admit, KOTOR isn't on any new consoles, and B, 8-year-old kids aren't going to want to play a game that you have to pour 40 hours into. So I think that if they go with, and we already know it's being built off this certain engine, and the company they're working with has worked on the games that I think would work for KOTOR, to where it's not going to be an RPG. It's going to be more of you explore the world and you...
Yeah, like we talked about on the last episode, kind of an open world.
Which lends itself to Knights of the Old Republic, because it itself was pretty open world. You were able to walk around the worlds pretty heavily.
Okay.
And do missions around. Now, it's not as open world or open world like games nowadays, but it was open world at the time. So them doing an open world, Ubisoft saying they're doing an open world game, would work for Knights of the Old Republic. I think you have to be careful for the story, because I know there are multiple
you
stories.
can have like a good or a bad ending,
right?
Yeah,
So
I don't think they can do that where you choose your own.
And I don't even think
adventure.
they can really go with the story they've got, because then it'd just be like, it's kind of lazy. It feels lazy. Let's just take what they've got.
I'm not saying that.
I think set in the era would be awesome. Going back that far into the galaxy, 1,000, 2,000 years or whatever it is, would be awesome. And even maybe throwing in some of the characters with slight modifications. Revan I know might be a little bit of might be tough to pull off.
Well, Revan's canon, isn't he? Didn't they bring him into?
No, they almost brought him into the Mortis arc, but it was a deleted scene.
And the only character they brought in from Legends that was kind of popular around the Old Republic was Bane in the Sacrifice arc.
And I don't think they can bring in Darth Nihilus, because that dude's too powerful.
Yeah.
Although that could be the main bad guy. I don't know. But I think that if they bring in characters, they're going to have to be heavily modified, and the story is going to be completely different. But I think some of the characters and the setting would be a lot of fun.
Michael, did you play KOTOR? Was that a game that you were into?
No. I didn't game for quite a while. I stopped gaming. I got an original Xbox when they came out in 2000, and I had that only for about 6 months. That's a whole other story in itself. And then I really didn't do. I would game here and there at people's houses or whatever, but I didn't do much gaming up until about a year ago when for Fallen Order I got a brand new gaming laptop. That's cool. Just really quick, Revan is canon in his name because his name appears in the visual dictionary as one of the legions
of the Sith.
of the Sith.
Okay.
But other than that, that's the only thing and canon that we have for Revan.
Okay.
There is a statue or a picture of multiple statues engraved on a site, whether it's one of the temples, I'm not sure, which does depict Nihilus and Revan. But once again, they don't really talk about it. It's just, engravings on, the wall of a Sith temple or something. I forget exactly where it comes from. So like that story is kind of told out, but it doesn't really, they don't say anything. It's just, pictures. So you can make what you want. But I mean, I think, this is the issue that it comes with. Star Wars, like, we have our own headcanon, and we have things that we've watched that are Star Wars or read or heard that are Star Wars, but and that's where it's always a hot topic sometimes, whether it's canon or not canon. And canon are your 9 movies, plus Solo and Rogue One. Your cartoons, Clone Wars, Rebels, Resistance. The books that came out after 95, but not Plagueis. Plagueis, missed that by a month or two. And Disney and Lucasfilm, whoever, have said that book isn't canon, so they can rewrite that story. But they use so much from that book. It's kind of like a pseudo canon, but technically it's not. So when I talk with people about that book, I say, hey, you know what? I wish it was canon, but it's not. But it's still a great book to read because they're using so much from it. But you can't really use, like, that's the whole thing. If you're trying to argue or have a discussion with someone about Star Wars, well, this happened and that happened. Well, I mean, you can't use that as a basis point because it basically never happened.
Yeah.
I don't go ahead.
You're a pretty big Legends guy. You have read a lot of that content, right?
No, actually,
okay.
I've read. I know of it, but
okay.
I haven't really read it.
Okay.
I've read every novel that's come out in the Disney era, including the young readers books and some of even the kids books, because those give you some nice little tidbits and Easter eggs too that you never even.
Little things that a sentence here and there that all of a sudden makes your ears perk up a little bit. Huh?
And you're like, wait a second, that's from that movie, but I never noticed it.
Right.
Or I mean, there's so many things like today, when I knew I was coming on here, I rewatched Attack of the Clones this morning, and there was a couple things that I was like, that just made me think, because I, just out of, just a different mindset than I probably was the last time. And I was laying around watching it while I was doing a couple other things. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I never really noticed that before.
Yeah, it's always fun to revisit things, especially if it's been a little while and you've got some distance from it. Go back and rewatch it. It changes things. We did that a few weeks ago. Sam and Nate and I. Well, for me, it was a revisiting. For them, it was the first exposure to Heir to the Empire. We were listening to the audio version, the 20th anniversary, read by Mark Thompson, which is fantastic. And for them, it was their first experience with it. And as we were listening, I guess I had just forgotten how critical, not how critical she was, but how she was introduced. Mara Jade was introduced into Star Wars and into the consciousness of Star Wars fans in that book, and how closely connected with Thrawn that she has. Thrawn is coming back. We know that he's going to be in live action. We just we assume it's going to be Lars Mikkelsen based on what we're hearing from the rumor mill. In the Star Wars Ahsoka series, but Mara Jade is as closely tied and as well loved from the Legends universe as he is. Should Star Wars consider bringing Mara Jade back and bring her into the Disney era, Michael?
I mean, see, once again, it's if they do decide to bring her in, is she going to be Mara Jade? And then if she's not Luke's wife, or it doesn't start that she's an assassin, are people that are in love with Legends and think that Legends should be canon, are they going to be like, well, that's not my Mara Jade? And, that gets into the whole thing. It's like, they're telling us a story. It's not our story. We might love the story. We might sit around on an afternoon and talk about the story, or my shows are, at nighttime and, sometimes can run 3 or 4 hours long, right, depending on who decides to get on and what we're talking about. But it's all, can they bring a character back based on the Legends character Mara Jade, that whether or not, as far as right now, Luke doesn't have any children. Could it turn out that maybe, he did have some children and something happened with them? Whether they were sent into exile too, or they were killed by the dark side. I mean, you're not going to get the same Mara Jade that you had in the stories that were before. But they could bring her back as, they could be very controversial, and she was, one of his unofficial students or someone else that was a Force user that, to make it kind of more friendly family instead of being an assassin turned, love interest. It could kind of be like, oh, well, they met together and they were a love interest, and then whatever happened. I mean, they're much better storytellers than I am. That's why I'm sitting here talking with you and not writing her story.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it brings up like the whole issue of like how much can you change a character with it still being the same character? Like, can you just throw the name on a character and expect people to accept that that's Mara Jade? Like Thrawn, they brought him in, and obviously it's not the same character. He's one of the complaints that I think it was Adam that he brought up was that his story was much smaller in Rebels than it was in the Heir to the Empire novels. He was the big baddie in Heir to the Empire, and then in Rebels he was just
trilogy, right?
Yeah, in Rebels he was just he just dealt with one planet. So, but the character still felt the same. He was still cold and calculating. It was the same character, but they changed the story a bit. With Mara Jade, how much are you able to change the story without it affecting the character? Because so much of her character is dependent on she was an assassin for the Emperor. She was Luke's wife. I mean, those are the big things.
The mother of Luke's child.
Right. And like, if you take those away, is it still Mara Jade, or is it just some Jedi with that name?
With red hair and a lightsaber,
exactly.
And has the name Mara Jade.
Exactly. So it brings up that whole thing. And I don't know if, granted, like you said, there are better writers out there, and that's why they're doing it and not us. But I don't know how they can bring her in without it pissing off certain fans and then not other fans,
I don't know how they're going to be able to pull this off, if they're even going to be able to pull this off, and even if they'll do it. I don't know if they're going to keep bringing in Legends characters to satisfy the EU fans. And I'm not saying that that's a problem. Bringing in these characters to make these people happy gets you money, and that's a business. And so,
and they also can satisfy new fans. I didn't know about Thrawn until they brought him in, and I love the character now.
And it could always happen in ways we don't expect. It could be that she's in a different timeline, or Mara Jade is a different character that we didn't expect at all, just has the same name. So it could change anything. And I do think they could, if they wanted to, they could bring in that Mara Jade is an assassin and actually did fall in love with Luke and did bear his child. And so I think that it all could work, and it wouldn't be too dark if they figure out how to do it. And it's Star Wars, and they will be able to. And so they have made, like we've been saying with Last Jedi, if they took out all of the comedic elements in that would have been a very, very dark movie. And those comedic elements really are the only thing that saved it from that. So it's just, if they figure out how to do it, even if they do it, they need to balance that.
Yeah, I think there's my argument for them bringing the possibility for them bringing her into Disney canon, and then my reason why I don't think that they will. I'll start with the reasons why they could. It feels like, you were talking about what Adam said about how the Rebels version of Thrawn is such a smaller character than the Thrawn trilogy of the Legends universe. Thrawn, Thrawn was the bad guy of the post Return of the Jedi period, and he's a different character in that lane. But now we're finally in that era. See, what we have to remember about the Heir to the Empire book was that he's coming in after having disappeared before the events of the original trilogy, because that's what they had to do in order to make the story work. He was out, outside of the galaxy or whatever, and then he came back and then resurrected the Empire. That's what it feels like they're trying to do with Thrawn right now. In the Ahsoka stuff.
Okay.
They've brought him back. The era fits. They could have him being the character or the leader that's really being used by the Emperor by Sidious while he's on Exegol to craft and develop the First Order. We know that Filoni and Favreau have both said that The Mandalorian will show us the origins of the First Order. There's a connection there. They brought that into The Mandalorian now. So all of those things seem to suggest that the Thrawn of the Ahsoka series is going to be the big bad guy like he was in the original the Thrawn trilogy, which then makes it, well, why not bring in Mara Jade as part of that if they're trying to tell a similar story? The reason I don't think that they'll bring him back or her back or into canon is because George Lucas hates the character.
Really?
He's been on record. He said he can't stand Mara Jade.
Why?
He never liked the character. So, any final thoughts on the Thrawn, or you were talking earlier, Michael, about you read everything that's going on. So I'm assuming you finished Light of the Jedi.
I did.
All right,
that was quick.
Well, no, it's not quick. It's been a month almost since it came out.
It takes me like 3 months.
Yeah. And so tell us what your opinions were on it in your non-spoiler review.
I really liked it, but I also have to go into the mindset that this is building a new era. So it's a lot of character building and talking. And there is action in there, but it's not a start to finish that you can do with once you have characters, already developed. Just like I had to go, I read with my ears. All my books are on Audible. And I used to be, up until recently, I've pulled away from Twitter. Star Wars used to be, that's all I really did was just Star Wars from, the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. I've kind of pulled away from that, and I do some other things, which is kind of weird because if a year or two ago I would have never said those words, but I mean, as a person, I'm much happier from it too.
Sure.
But it's like, so the book took me 4 or 5 days to get through, which normally I would have gotten up at, when it dropped at my times, Eastern Standard Time.
And listened straight through.
I would have listened for 2 or 3 hours and gone to bed, back to bed for an hour or two, and then got up and I would have listened for, the rest of the day, whether I was on the train to work or if I could listen. So I'd have it done the first day. It took me a few days, or a week to get through. But yeah, it's more of, storytelling, and some people don't like the Phantom Menace and the Phantom Menace. Well, sorry, that was a 40.
I don't know very many people that like the Phantom
Menace.
Menace, but that's a totally different conversation.
Yeah, that was not meant to come out that way. The Phantom Menace, and because there's not a lot of action, and they're talking about trade routes, and they're setting everything up. Well, it's setting up your next 3 movies and letting you know then what happens for the next series, how everything happened. So it's a lot of. You have to look at the whole story and try and see why things are happening, which is something, I'll watch a documentary about, a war that happened. And they might talk about, a treaty that was signed 10 years before that really affected on how it was. And a lot of people are going to sit there and watch and say, oh, that's boring. And I know there's a few of my friends, Rural Farm Boy is one of them, who, but he said, the book wasn't really for me. I didn't really like it. Maybe the next ones will be. But it's introducing new characters, and you don't really have a basis on them, so they have to delve into as much as they can and build on it. But I think it was really good. The name's slipping me right now. I also read the Young Reader book.
Okay,
that came out. That was that was more fun.
Okay,
that was more fun, introducing, kind of like if you never knew anything about Star Wars and you said, hey, start with Bloodlines, people are going to be like, okay, I don't really get it. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But if I say, hey, start with Dark Disciple, okay, it's completely different book, completely different way things are going on. But anyways, to get back to your original question, I really like it. I like what they're doing. I think it's gonna set up the rest of what we have. I know we have. This is still phase 1. I'm one of those people that definitely go with phase 1 because even though, referencing Star Wars Celebration again, the last one we had, they said it's going to be a multimedia event taking place over years, and a lot of us, and they said it's going to be very, literature heavy, but there were a lot of us that left there that saying, hey, we're going to get movies, we're going to get video games, we're going to get this, we're going to get that. And it turns out that that's not what we have so far, but I think it's going to be, we're getting books, and they're going to use the books to set it up. And then when they do come out with video games and movies for it, people are going to be, there's already a basis for it. So you're not going to be watching the movie going, hey, they're introducing all these characters. They're still going to have to, not to sound like I don't know. They're gonna have to dumb it down for people that aren't.
Star Wars it makes sense. Yeah,
so they can come in and jump right in to the movie and not have to have an entire movie of explaining how everything's working and how everything's going. But we're gonna know the little details and be able to pick up on things. But yeah, I highly recommend it so far.
Cool.
Next in 4 or 5 days we have the Claudia Gray book coming out,
right?
Which I'm really excited about. So, and I really like how they switched it up. You have comic book writers writing novels. You have, other authors writing comic books. It's just there's so much going on, and someone writing a children's book that's only written novels, and and also that so this doesn't become like a Legends issue where none of the books really are cohesive and different.
Yeah, that working together is what makes this special.
And there's the stories about how someone would in their group text be like, "Hey, I'm stuck on this" at 3:00 in the morning, and they'd wake up the next day and they'd have a whole list of, "Hey, these are the options that we think," or "This is a tie." This could be used as a tie-in for my book.
Okay, cool,
interesting.
So it's there, even though they're all their own separate works. They kind of work together.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we're going to have a cohesive, set of stories that 2 years from now, the book. Claudia Gray might have written her book before. I think it was Soul that wrote the first one. She might have had her book done and finished before his book was written, and she might have said, "Hey, well, I did this for mine, and I did that," even though his came out first, and it's supposed to be the first book. So you don't really know how things are going to work out, and how they're going to tie in, and. Just a little side note again. I really hate when people talk about The Mandalorian and say, "Oh, this is a filler episode," or that didn't really work. And then you find out in season 2 that filler episode in season 1 really ties everything together that you didn't know about, or it's like. Hey, this is really just a continuation of that episode and Easter eggs.
Yeah. I mean, you can't claim if you watch Star Wars Rebels, you should never, and we are guilty of using that phrase filler episode, just like, lots of people are. But the reality is, as Rebels fans, the Purgles episode was the finale. It tied directly to the finale, and it is the solution to where Thrawn and Ezra are. And so the Purgle episode was not a filler episode. We should know this about Dave Filoni. There's no filler episodes in it. Hey, Michael, before we let you go, our main topic for the month of February is all about Attack of the Clones. You mentioned you were watching that film this morning. Give us your summary thoughts on the film, especially as it is almost 20 years after the film came out. It's by some considered the most or the weakest of the prequel trilogy films. What are your thoughts on Attack of the Clones?
I like it. I mean, I like all Star Wars.
Sure.
There hasn't been, anything that's come out that I haven't really liked. I mean, get rid of the Ewok movies or whatever, but I'd still watch it. But it gets into, I try and find maybe some of the later movies that have come out I have some issues with. I also think that The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie that's ever been made.
You're right.
It's
got turbos.
It's the most Jedi of the Jedi movies of what we know of the Jedi. But yeah, just watching this, just really quick, like I made a couple of notes. It starts off, it looks like Flash Gordon, the 1980s Flash Gordon movie, which I really never noticed before. And I know that George Lucas based, Star Wars originally on Flash Gordon, the comic book series. But that's like I was just watching it. That's the first thing I thought of. Mace Windu's kind of always been a jerk. He says, I used to love Mace Windu until his citizen line.
Oh yeah.
But he says, it's not Dooku's character, and then we find out that he's completely wrong. Like there's a lot of like one-liners and things in there. It shows the tie-ins between Anakin and Obi-Wan and like how close they are as brothers, which sets up, you were my brother, Anakin, which sets up one of the last lines they have together. It's got a car chase, one of the best car chases ever. Something that I just realized today, I don't know if it's because I had the volume down on low and I was watching it because Danielle was still sleeping. When they go to the Outlander Club, if you look in the back, it's kind of like up a little bit, like on a different level. It looks like it could be it looks like Solo or just like the way that they're dressed and like the extravagant cheesiness of it.
Okay.
The Last Jedi.
Like Canto Bight or something like that. That kind of feel.
Yeah, it's a little bit more, well-to-do. And like one of the things I always say is everyone talks about the writing of it and how cheesy Anakin is. But I always say, listen, I was a 16-year-old, boy once, and I thought I had all the game in the world. But when it came down to it, and it was, with a girl and, trying to get to know her better, all that goes out the window. And I can say what I want to, but really what I'm trying to say usually isn't right. So it probably would sound, if you took, if you had a snippet of my life and trying to talk to a girl, it would probably sound really cheesy, like what he's saying. And if you listen to kids now and they're trying to talk to somebody or whatever, just because there's no experience. You went from, this girl you've been in love with your entire life, and
she's back in your life again. Yeah.
And then also when he's sitting there talking and it's after their first kiss and he's trying to persuade her to have a relationship. There's a line in that dialogue where he says, "The kiss you never should have given me." Or you should have never given me, or whatever.
I'm haunted by the kiss. Yeah.
If you listen to the first part of that sounds like a poem I know Anakin's a little bit older, but I'm acquainted just because he's never been around. As far as we know, he's never been around women before, or he's never had a relationship like this, and he's been pining over here for all these years. It sounds like a poem that he would have been sitting at home writing, trying to memorize for when he does meet her. So it actually is. It's kind of like, I was like, that sounds like a really decent poem, like a little love poem for someone with no experience of writing poems, or he
was thinking all afternoon about it.
I hate sand.
And then it gets into the cheesiness afterwards of
right.
Whatever he's doing. That's funny. Just like one of the last things, it's they talk about hiding the relationship's going to destroy them, and that's exactly what happened.
It does.
So there's a lot of foreshadowing because we knew what the story kind of was going to be, but we didn't have the details. So there's a lot of foreshadowing, or maybe it's because I've been watching the movies for 20 years that I can go back and say, hey, maybe this is what they meant for it. Maybe I'm reading way too much into it, but it does set up a lot of what's going to happen in the next movie, whether it's even intentional or not, but it makes the pieces fit.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's I've always said that George Lucas is, unrivaled storyteller and not a great script writer. And I think that's what we see in Attack of the Clones with some of the, and Phantom Menace and some of the others, which is also a testament to how amazing the ensemble of Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford were in the original trilogy, because they took some of that dialogue and they were able to make it sound, and you hear Mark Hamill joke about it all the time. You can write this stuff, but you can't say it, that type of stuff. So, awesome. So, Michael, before you go, tell everybody about the Bacta tank and everything else you have going on.
Okay. I have the TooMedToo Star Wars Network. It's every Monday at usually 8:30, sometimes 9:30. The time does change a little bit depending on who the guest is. It's more of an interview, with someone or a group of people. I talk, as you can tell from being on here, I talk way too much to call it an interview, because I go on my tangents sometimes. But that's Monday nights. Saturday nights I do. It is a Not Safe for Work. The title of it is Not Safe for Work. Mom, please don't watch. So no one gets the idea, of watching it,
right.
And is kind of a little bit taken aback. And that's Saturday nights. And then my buddy, I've been working a lot on Saturday night, so I haven't been able to start it or do it myself. So my buddy Kylo from Kylo Customs has been starting off and doing it for me. And he started doing his own channel, or resurrected it, where he just kind of does, where I used to just get on and we would just talk for hours and hours. He's kind of doing that during the week, not specified times, just kind of, hey, we're going to talk tonight. So you guys can go check out Kylo Customs.
Awesome.
On there also.
Very cool. Well, thanks for joining us. I appreciate you coming on the show. We'll have to do it again sometime soon, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So we got some. I put the poll up this week, guys.
Hey!
And so we've got some votes on it. So we'll talk about that all after the break. This is Tatooinesons.
Are you brainless? I never asked that question till after I've done it. What?
I love that guy.
All right.
He's so cool. Well, I mean, he knows who he is as a Star Wars fan, and he doesn't apologize for it. But he's super positive. But he's just, I'm not a book guy. I'm going to listen to the audiobooks. I didn't do the Legends, the expanded universe.
I don't play games.
I don't play the games, and all that. And then I love how he was like, you know what? Star Wars was like an obsession for a little while, and my life is better now that it's not.
Yeah.
I understand that.
It's healthy to take a step back.
You have to, especially Star Wars Twitter. It's not pleasant. It's like every few weeks I'll get into it for a few days and I'll be like commenting and I'll be responding, and then something will happen, which is just classic Star Wars Twitter, and I'm like, yep, I'm out. I'm gone. And it's like 2 weeks before I log in. That's why I forget to do the polls. I didn't forget to do the poll this week.
Good job.
Yeah. Did you see that transition too?
Yeah, man, you were just
I'm on my game.
like crazy.
And I didn't sleep at all last night. Literally, I was up all night. So, all right, last week's podcast poll of the week was which character introduced in The Phantom Menace had the biggest impact on the future of Star Wars storytelling? Qui-Gon Jinn, Padme Amidala, Darth Maul, or other comment below. Sam, you said Padme?
Yeah, I said Padme.
Nate, you said
Maul.
3.1% said other comment below. There were some fun ones. Mace Windu was a really common one.
Okay.
One guy screenshotted some stuff from Wikipedia about what Luke Skywalker says about Mace Windu when he discovered found out about Mace and researched who he was and all that.
Yeah.
It was a really compelling argument for Mace Windu. It was really good. But only 3.1% voted other comment below. The next place was Qui-Gon Jinn. 23.1%. There were some people that were really passionate about that. And they always keep going back to Force Ghosts. And the reason that I don't feel the same way with Force Ghosts is because Force Ghosts existed before we heard of Qui-Gon Jinn. Right. So it's not like the idea of the Force Ghost was created in The Phantom Menace by the character of Qui-Gon, with the character. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from.
But like they started training people with the ways of becoming a Force Ghost.
Right. I mean, they reference where that idea of the Force Ghost starts coming. It starts getting a little bit deeper lore associated with it. Same thing with Padme. Lots of people quoted Padme. I like the idea of Padme. But you're going to have the twins, regardless of whether or not it's the Queen of Naboo, and whether or not it's Padme, Senator Padme, and all that. The story didn't change dramatically as a result of Padme. She was just a vessel for the twins in a lot of ways. And I love the character, and I love what E.K. Johnston's done with her in Queen's Shadow, Queen's Peril. I love how we've got more of her, and she's a better character now than she was, especially in Revenge of the Sith. But in the end, you could have told the story with a completely different character and had the same result.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
All you have to do is get Anakin 2 twin kids.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be mean. I mean, please don't be mad at me. Please don't send me mean Twitter things because you think I don't like Padme. I didn't say that. I'm just saying her character
overall,
it doesn't impact the story as much as others. And that got 32.8%. And then, of course, Darth Maul, 41%. With that, we had a couple comments that I thought were absolutely hilarious. Who's got the first one there?
Matt Butner.
Mm-hmm.
At Matt Butner. Thank you for making it easy on us. Considering how often Maul came back in both animated shows and is really the big bad in Solo, it's a clear choice.
He took my argument and your argument, BB Nate. Basically, it's like he listened to the show or something.
Well, you think?
If he did, then great.
Probably not. But
and then we've got Stephen N. Santa at Stephen N. Santa.
Another easy one.
He followed that rule, but he did not have the same opinion. He said,
"No,
lol, it's absolutely lol." I just said lol.
LOL.
LOL. It's absolutely not Maul. Maul, the cool tattoo karate guy with the dual blades, is a tragic story, but actually it's Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon, the man who followed the will of the Force and not politics, the way Jedi should be. Also, if not for him, there'd be no Force Ghost.
Right, so he's making the Qui-Gon argument.
True. But I don't think this guy has seen any of the animated shows or even Solo.
Yeah, it's like he's skipping all of that.
Point.
With that. And
Which
then
I know a lot of people haven't seen Solo. And if you haven't, then you really need to.
Go see it. And then we had Neil Lowry, our Mr. Positivity. Positivity for all, Neil. At Lowry Neil. He says, as for story, he's a smart guy.
He's a smart guy.
He's a really smart guy. He's a smart Star Wars fan. With it. As for story impact, definitely Maul. For the impact of special effects, Jar Jar Binks and Ahmed Best.
True.
Good point.
I like that because it's true.
Mocap and CGI. Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Huh.
That's good. I love it when Neil comes in and just he pops
drops
his
a little
head.
bomb and
He pops up his head. He says something really profound and then leaves. He's got a little bit of the BB Nate going.
Yeah, pretty much.
But this week's poll coming up is going to be about obviously Act 1 of the Attack of the Clones, because that's what we're talking about today, which is the biggest moment in Act 1. The assassination attempt on Padme and Anakin. The clones or Shmi's death. Just first instinct. I'll start with you, Samuel the Hutt. First instinct. Which one's the biggest? Shmi's death?
Yeah, probably. The clones, probably.
Clones are big.
It's going to be interesting to see how that poll plays out. Your Clone Wars fans are going to have...
Clones are really
an opportunity
important
here.
to Star Wars.
They are.
If you go into the Clone Wars, but without the Clone Wars, they're a footnote.
Yeah, it's interesting on that. All right, so we're going to go into the Act 1 of Attack of the Clones. It's
going to hold back all the memes.
It is. It's going to be hard to not talk memes with it. It's the most meme. The prequels are so memeable.
I think Episode 3 has more.
I wonder if that.
Yeah.
That's probably true. But we'll do that all up next after the break. This is Tatooinesons. A lot happens in Act 1 of Attack of the Clones. Padme Amidala is going to survive not one, but two assassination attempts. Obi-Wan is going to discover a new planet and a new army. Shmi is going to die. And don't forget the infamous sand line from Anakin. Star Wars will never be the same again. It just reminds me of the guy that had Hayden Christensen autograph of a jar of sand.
And I love how Celebration, when they had him in there, said, please don't make fun of his line.
Please don't harass Hayden Christensen about sand. And some dude literally brings a jar of sand for him to sign.
Yeah, but the thing I'm most excited to talk about on today's episode is the scene that scared Samuel the Hutt to death. It was
freaky, okay?
That's all up after the break. Oh, no, wait, we already did the break. I guess we'll just go right into it. That's next.
Bulky religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
If you live long enough, you see the same eyes in different people.
All right. You know, when the ship lands, that beautiful chrome prequel era B-2 bomber is kind of what it looks like.
It does look like a B-2 bomber.
No, it's not that one, is it?
No, it's the big one. You're thinking of the right one.
Because it blows up.
Right.
That's right. When it lands... Oh, that was beautiful in the movie, though.
It was
the first time, especially in the theater. It lands, and you see the queen, or the senator in this case, coming down that ramp, and it blows up.
And then what was the dude's name?
Typho. Captain Typho.
He's like, oh, I guess there's nothing to worry about anyway. Boom, bam.
Right. Famous last words. I'm trying to remember if I actually believed that Padme was dead in that moment. I guess you can't. She couldn't have been dead because she was going to be the mother of Luke and Leia.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I ever really thought that, but obviously it's the decoy. It's Corday. Is it Corday? Dorme? Corday?
Corday sounds better.
Corday, I think, might be the one that's actually later with her. I don't remember. Anyway.
They've all got this. They all end with A at the end.
Sabe.
Yeah.
Padme.
Dorme. Corday. Oive. So, did you guys ever think that was... I mean, you've seen it since you were so little, but...
Yeah, that, and they show who it actually was really soon after. I mean, literally, Padme runs over and was like, oh, no, I'm so sorry. And, like, that's it. Like, you don't have much time to wonder if it was Padme or not. So, I doubt I ever really thought it was Padme. Plus, when I first watched it, I was really little, so I probably wouldn't even think about it anyway. I'm like, where's the lightsaber fights?
No.
So...
Ooh, big explosion.
Yeah, we're 10 years later, after the Phantom Menace.
Yes.
And she's no longer queen at this point. She's become senator. She's replaced Palpatine.
Because Palpatine's...
He's now chancellor.
Right.
And so she's replaced him. Which feels like a step down a little bit.
That's
Queen to senator.
Yeah.
She's more into politics, though. And Queen is really just about her people, and I think she likes
yeah, that's
politics
more of a title.
Okay, that's fair. The story in Queen's Shadow. I'm thinking that's the right one, by E.K. Johnston.
Have you read Queen Sparrow?
I have not yet. A Queen Shadow, though, is really fun to see how she gets into this role with it. It's hard.
Of Senator?
Of Senator, yeah. It's a pretty interesting conversation there with Palpatine as she
Was it Sabe?
No, Sabe's still alive.
That's right.
Yeah, Sabe is the theory behind Sabe.
I'm just so many.
That's Keira Knightley's character,
right?
Yeah. Okay, so Sabe is she survives.
She's like in the Vader comics or something.
She's in the Vader comics, and Vader thinks that it's Padme when he sees her the first time,
for like a second, yeah.
And basically that's the detailed retcon of the images and the memories that Leia has of her mother, because she's seen pictures of her mother and she remembers seeing Sabe. And so she's connecting in her mind that it's the same person with it.
Nice save, writers.
Yeah, well, sometimes you got to fix George Lucas.
The amount of retcons that happen in the comics are insane.
Yeah,
it's interesting. She's changed. Yeah. She's become a senator.
She's like a full-grown adult doing her own thing.
Obviously, Obi-Wan has changed. He's a master now, so he's no longer
nice
a Padawan.
long flowing hair.
Yeah, but he looks different too, right? So he's got the
beard,
the beard, and the really wavy,
the Jesus hair.
That's the Jesus hair on that. So he's changed a lot, and his attitude is different too. The way he carries himself,
a lot more confident.
Yeah, confident, reserved.
Yeah.
The stuff that he laughs at. You think about it when you watch it the next time. Some of those opening scenes in this first act when he's interacting about things.
Oh yeah,
he's just like laughing and stuff like that with it. I'll do that one more time just for everybody.
No, we're good.
But Anakin, he's older. Obviously, he's 10 years older. But he's still the Padawan. He's still got the braid, and he's still acting like 10-year-old Anakin. Do you agree or disagree?
He's all whiny. He's all whiny. He's like, I'm all nervous. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still stuck on Padme after 10 years.
Right.
And then...
a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time to crush on some 14-year-old girl.
Right.
With it. And he's like creepy obsessive.
A little bit.
With her. What do you think about, that moment in the bedroom when they're talking? Anakin
Nate and I both look at each other like...
They're both talking. Sam, this is for you. That you can speak into this first, and then Nate, you can go after that. Where he's saying something to Padme. I can't remember the exact context of the conversation, but she says, "You're still that little boy."
That little boy on Tatooine.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Is that not only is that like a horrible thing to say in that moment for her to this guy that's crushing on her for 10 years,
right?
But is that foreshadowing to what has happened, what we're talking about here? Padme is advanced and she's grown in 10 years. Obi-Wan has grown. But is George Lucas trying to tell the viewer
that he hasn't
that
changed?
Anakin is the same Anakin as he was 10 years ago? He's still stuck there.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like Anakin's character. He never really changes or improves. He's always rebellious. He's always thinking about those he cares about, which, I mean, granted, you can't...
At least in the movies.
Yeah. I mean, even to an extent in Clone Wars, he's still pretty rash or brash, excuse me, that's the word. Brash and constantly emotional, and if anybody he cares about gets hurt, he takes up arms about it. I mean, like Ahsoka and Padme and stuff. So
Obi-Wan.
Yeah, Obi-Wan. I mean, he never really...
R2, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, he never really improves very much. He gets older.
He gets
and more
stronger
skilled.
in the Force. He gets more skilled in the Force, but he doesn't mature.
Yeah.
I feel like he becomes a better Jedi after Shmi dies.
Okay, so is he a better Jedi, or is he a stronger Force user after Shmi dies?
Right.
I think he's a better Jedi. If we look at Clone Wars, he's a lot more calm and collected in everything he does, and he also
it transitions, I think.
Yeah, while he's not as mature, he still knows that this is a war, and he knows how to fight, and so I think he becomes a better Jedi.
Good Force user, just a good fighter.
Yeah, I think that there's an interesting, thing to contemplate here with Anakin, because if he hasn't grown at this point in the story, he's the same kid. He's just 10 years older,
right?
And then we get to this moment. Obviously we'll come to it in a second, but with Shmi, and we'll talk about that. Then suddenly he starts changing. His personality starts developing. He starts moving forward. Right? Is it that moment that calls him to grow up, or is that the dark side that he's tapping into?
Okay, before we get into that, I have to ask this question. If he's never matured or anything, and he was just a really strong in the Force, a great Force user, did he ever really become a Jedi?
Well, sure. I mean, because the Jedi at this point, that's a good question. The Jedi at this point are not the Jedi of the High Republic.
I mean, can I use a really
go
controversial example? It's like the difference between being a Christian and just going to church.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great analogy. Well, I'll develop it for you with it, because I think I understand where you're coming from, right? So to be a Jedi, you have to be able to accomplish certain things through the Force. You have to be able to do certain things with the lightsaber. You have to live according to a certain code,
right?
But that doesn't mean you're fully surrendered to the light side of the Force,
right?
Okay, and what you're using with like Christianity versus like being a calling yourself a Christian and being a follower of Christ there's a difference, right? Calling yourself a Christian, well, I go to church, I read my Bible, I tithe, I serve in Sunday school, I sing in the choir, whatever. You can check your list with it. I don't curse, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't hang out with people that do. I guess that makes me a good Christian. None of that makes you a good Christian,
right?
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That is what we're called to do. That's the difference.
I feel like everybody overcomplicates it sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus was like, everybody.
Love.
Well, Jesus didn't complicate it. He flat out said everything in the law and the prophets, meaning everything that you read about in the what we call the Old Testament today, is summed up in these two commandments. If you just love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength,
which is funny,
and love your neighbor as yourself, everything else will take care of itself.
It's kind of the opposite of the Jedi code in a way, like. You're called to love. Well, okay, that's kind of what.
No, maybe not though. This is the problem.
Anakin is like on that freighter ship, and he's like, "Oh, I think we're encouraged to love." It's like a selfless love. So.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because before we do that though, we teased it earlier. Sam. Okay, so the changeling, tries to take out Padme with the caterpillar poison worm things.
Yeah.
And then Anakin and Obi-Wan had a great car chase scene.
Yeah.
Michael talked about it earlier. I was going to say something on that, but I forgot, or we got talking about something else. So the car, the yellow speeder or whatever in that is literally the exact same car from American Graffiti. That's like one of the main cars that you see in that. It's just been repurposed. He's like made it a spacecraft.
That's awesome.
For that, George Lucas did that.
I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But anyway, they have all that, and then you get to the scene in the bar or whatever that Michael was talking about. Where the thing that he thinks is
Jedi business. Go back to your drinks.
Yeah, exactly. Sam, explain what's why the change. You would make us turn this off or fast forward every single time. Explain.
Well, they chase I forget her name.
Zam
Wessel through the bar, right? And they like get out on like the back alley behind the bar, and they like get her in the street, and they've got like her pinned, and they're like asking her questions, and then she gets shot by that saber dart
by Django,
and then she starts changing to the changeling face, and for whatever reason, when I was little, that face creeped the crap out of me. I was so freaked out.
Did you know this, Nate? Did you know anything about? Okay.
I was so freaked out by her face. I don't know why.
He's such a wimp.
I don't know why, but it messed me up. I hated that.
He was like, fast forward. Turn it off, Daddy. Turn it off, Daddy.
He also got scared by the beginning of Finding Nemo. So
that's true, too.
Yeah. It was scary. He attacks all of them. He eats the mom.
It's a G movie.
Yeah.
It's scary.
So that's that story. That was fun.
Yeah.
The idea, they're on the craft on Anakin and Padme are on their way to Naboo. Mm-hmm. He's going to protect her. In the book, the conflict, when they arrive on Naboo, where there's this conflict over how they should proceed between Anakin and Padme.
Yeah.
In the book, it's like an all-out, full-fledged argument in front of her parents. It goes on 2-3 different scenes. They're arguing in front of everybody.
Yikes.
With it.
Every couple has fights.
Yeah, they're having their fight with it. But what about the attachments then? This is the first time we see this.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, they kind of allude to it at the end of The Phantom Menace, but they don't really get into it like this. What do you think about that? Sam, BB Nate, you go first.
I think that it goes back to what Yoda says at the end of Revenge of the Sith. We were wrong, and so I think that it should never have happened. It's the dark side used emotions and attachments and everything against the Jedi, and I feel like if the Jedi allowed emotion and attachments, that they would have become better than ever before. I mean, we see, like I said last week, we see that all the Jedi that prevail in a battle is all because of an attachment. Because we have Luke or Vader against Palpatine. We have Rey or Ben against Palpatine. Together, yeah. And then we have, I mean, there are so many examples.
Luke and Leia.
Yeah.
Their connections. Han and Ben. Han brings Ben back because of the love that Ben has.
Yes. So attachments are really necessary for Jedi. And the Sith use that banning of attachments against them. And so I think it's very important.
Yeah, I think it's a flawed ideology. I think that it comes from, like, they're doing it, for lack of a better term, in the right heart or whatever. They got the right heart about it. You know, because they're like, okay, Sith, dark side, it's all about attachments and emotions and tapping into that. Why don't we cut that out entirely? When you could, instead of cutting it out entirely, teach them how to use those feelings and attachments for good. So
yeah, they obviously the attachment thing doesn't really apply to Anakin. He doesn't think he's got a crush on Padme. He's going to go after Padme.
Like we're encouraged to love action.
Yeah, I mean, and then of course we have that famous scene.
Oh yeah.
You guys know the lines.
Infamous.
I try to ignore it.
I don't know at all.
I hate sand.
So what? Yeah, I hate.
She's
sand.
like, he'd go and swim on the island and lay in the sand. He's like, I don't like sand. He's like, it's coarse and rough and irritating and gets everywhere. And he's like, but not like here. Here, everything is soft and smooth. And he starts caressing her shoulder, and I'm like,
nice, a little creepy, but
weird.
A nice line.
I absolutely love the tag and bink scene with that. It is hilarious.
Are they feeding him lines?
They're trying to be his wingman.
Oh, that's funny.
And so they're sitting right underneath that balcony.
And
they're listening to it. They're like, no.
I know people that have actually gone to that balcony in Italy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's beautiful.
And stuff. Yeah.
And Tag and Bink and Anakin goes to them afterwards, and he's like, how did I do? He's like, why did you mention sand?
I want to read those comics. I'm going to bring those on a trip and read that comic.
We've had some fun with some of this, but there's a couple obviously super important moments that happen, and I think that these are in conflict with each other for our poll. Obi-Wan gets to Kamino. He finds the planet.
There's not there.
We've been expecting you.
Visible confusion.
Is Kamino being missing from the Jedi archives and the arrogance of Jocasta Nu and everything that's associated with that? Is that George Lucas kind of foreshadowing that the Jedi are flawed and they don't even know it? They're missing things and they don't. There's things happening all around.
They're too prideful. Yep, they think they've got it all under control. Well, if it's not in the archives, then it just straight up doesn't exist, dude. And then he literally goes and is like, "Oh, here's the planet."
Does exist,
right? I mean, yeah, I think it's showing that the Jedi are too confident in themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember being actually reading the book and then being in the theater, and when this came out, and was it 2003? I think 2003. I gotta be honest with you. When they said Sifo Dyas, I thought they didn't know how to pronounce Sidious. But it was literally.
I get where you're coming from.
I think that I remember hearing that when George Lucas originally wrote the script, that it was just going to be Sidious that they were talking about, to allude to the Dark Lord that they're going after. And then a typo happened in the script, or typo happened in the screenplay, where it got typed out at Sifo Dyas, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, we'll change it up. We'll go with something different."
I'm happy if that is the case. I'm happy they went with Sifo Dyas, because that is one of the greatest subplots and lines of Dooku Jedi Lost. I love that.
Yeah,
Clone Wars.
And some Clone Wars stuff.
And Dark Disciple. I mean,
what's it like for Obi-Wan though when he finds out that there's this other Jedi Master that's like initiated a army of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these
200,000
clones
on the way.
These clones that are on there, and that's that first moment we hear, like, we actually see the clones.
Yeah,
you guys don't get it.
Because it was mentioned in episode 4, like your father and I served in the Clone Wars.
The conjecture and the speculation around what the Clone Wars were for Star Wars fans was massive. And then it had a whole plot line running through it when it came to the EU with it, because the clones come back. There's a clone of the Emperor. There's the clone Luke. That's even in Heir to the Empire, isn't it? Oh no, that's that Jairus Sabaoth. It's the
that's Dark Empire, right?
No. That's Heir to the Empire. He's a clone.
Yeah.
And Thrawn's Force using Jedi Master is actually a clone of the original Jedi Master. That he's being. It's
whack.
So when these guys show up on the scene, it was really freaking amazing to see that. And then when you see them in their armor at the end,
all the whole like.
And they're like you got the
Imperial March,
and they look like stormtroopers, kind of a cross between Boba Fett and the stormtroopers. And you're like, holy crap, that's the Empire.
Right.
I mean, the symbol looks so similar,
and the ships vaguely look like Star Destroyer.
And you're like, this is getting real.
Yep.
Yeah.
But nothing makes this get more real though than that moment when Shmi dies.
Oh.
And Anakin, he just
kills them all, not just the men, but the women. And
we don't have that scene in the first act. That happens a little bit later, but actually, it kind of happens at the end there.
It's like right there.
Love the whole shadow of Anakin on the hut that looks like Vader. That's always going to be an iconic.
Yeah, that is a cool.
Like the when he's like embracing Padme, or something. Okay,
which is great. I love that little tidbit.
Yeah,
it's literally foreshadowing.
Yeah, it's a good. When you take out the silliness,
it's a good movie.
And the memes
and the
clunky dialogue.
The sand
very
lines.
clunky dialogue.
This is a really great story.
Yeah,
and we haven't even gotten to things like Dooku, and we haven't really seen. Have we even seen Darth Sidious in this movie yet?
I think we've seen a little bit of Palpatine.
Well, we've seen Palpatine, I know that, but have we seen Darth Sidious?
I don't think we've seen Sidious yet, though.
Yeah, I mean, the only time we see Count Dooku in this is he's one of the busts of the Lost Jedi in the
first act.
In the first act, with it. We don't have Dooku yet, and that's going to be a lot of fun in the next act because he's a great character, especially
I love
through
Jedi
Clone
Lost.
Wars and Dooku Jedi Lost.
Dooku Jedi Lost really helped,
and it was such a good book too.
Yeah,
and it goes to Kevin Scott,
and I can't wait to talk about that next week because Dooku next week because I relate to Dooku.
You wanted to cosplay him
in Dooku Jedi Lost.
We still got to figure out
we do
get you to cosplay.
It was going to be Celebration this year, but
that didn't happen.
I wait another 2 years.
421 costume set up and everything.
I had no costume set up. It's just
you've got your BB-8 costume.
Yeah. No, we're not doing that one again.
What?
Yeah. What? So next week, Anakin's journey to the dark side begins at the end of Act 1. The attack of the clones, the Republic's transition into the Empire begins shortly thereafter. We're headed to Geonosis. We're going to meet Count Dooku, and Jar Jar is about to make a blunder that blows away anything that he did in The Phantom Menace. So that's coming next week. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Anything else?
Yeah, how you don't want Nathan wearing his BB-8 costume in Celebration. That's our thing. Nate wearing his
It was
BB-8.
cute when you were 11.
I have an adult version.
Yeah, we're both still wearing our costumes.
Okay.
It's like
one
a
day.
staple.
I'll wear other things the other days.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, anything else you guys want to talk about?
Celebrate the Star Wars Galaxy's greatest holiday with the Life Day Treasury.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Kevin Scott. We just talked about Dooku Jedi Lost. So Kevin Scott and George Mann.
Going to be basically doing a little bit of a mini comic series or book.
No, it's
series.
not a comic. It's a book. It's like Myths and Fables.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a book, a bunch of anthology tales about how Life Day is celebrated around the galaxy. It's over certain decades, like High Republic
Centuries,
and other things. And who knows, maybe we'll get a mention of Turbis.
Yeah, it's going to be cool.
And Ryan Johnson confirmed an awesome Easter egg. Fans had noticed it a while back, but it had never been confirmed how one of the bombs in the bombers at the beginning of Last Jedi has an airbrush painted on one of the bombs that says Han says hi.
Yeah, Ryan came out this week and confirmed it.
But bombs don't fall in space.
And then the postal for all you old people out there, if you want to start collecting Star Wars stamps, United States Postal Service is going to release some Star Wars themed stamps for Lucasfilm's 50th anniversary.
Pretty cool. That's cool.
I think we'll get them.
We have to.
I would get them framed, put them on the wall. Why not?
Are they like holographic? I hope they're like holographic.
Oh, that'd be cool.
No, they've seen the pictures of them. They're not holographic. Really cool. That's cool. All right. Anything? What do you guys want to say? Say before we.
Thank you for making it through the podcast, even though
it was a good show.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
it's
making it past the guess, is what I should have said. 'Cause, we're weird.
Yeah, and thanks for listening. And don't forget to check out our shop with all our cool stuff.
Yeah, flow.page / tatooinesons. Yeah, something like that. It's in the show notes. Just click on that. Yeah, that's good. Thank you guys for listening. Give us some ratings and reviews. We love
it. It gives us oxygen.
Yes.
Something like that. I'm not sure that's exactly
Your
how
comments are my oxygen.
Yeah, it's close
that works.
It's a Gary V thing. So that's pretty cool. All right. Anything else you guys want to say?
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.
Yep, yep.